Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Locke, welcoming you to this month's episode of Citizens Bulletin with our host, Ashley Klingensmith, the Pennsylvania State Director for Americans for Prosperity. Each month, Ashley brings timely reports about the work and efforts being done by Americans for Prosperity, which is one of the largest grassroots organizations in Pennsylvania and the United States. Hello, Ashley.
Susan, how are you, listeners? It's great to be back.
I'm well, and I hope you are too. And we are really looking forward to your report today. And I understand that Larissa is with you today.
Yes, you got it. We have our Director of Grassroots Operations, Larissa Gahn, on with us. So, Larissa, welcome.
Thank you so much. And hi, Susan. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Larissa. Welcome. We're looking forward to what you both have to share. And just take it away, Ashley.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. So, I thought it was really timely here. We have just crossed over to a new month. We are here in September, and it is really difficult to believe, but we are just 9 Saturdays from Election Day. And so 9 Saturdays, which means 9 days where the most number of voters are at home and who we can get in touch with. And we are down to single digits now for strategic opportunities for conversations. And so what I thought we would do is chat a bit about our political capability at Americans for Prosperity. I think it's been quite a while since we've done that. I would love to talk a bit about some of the endorsements that we have engaged in this year. And then I'm going to let Larissa talk about what some of the accompanying grassroots opportunities for engagement look like. And so I'll kind of take up the first half of our time and then I'll turn it over to Larissa. And if at any point, Susan, you have a question or you think a listener might be wondering something, you just feel free to interject. But I just mentioned 9 Saturdays, but really I think we're 62 days out, which again is wild to think about. And so it was now 2 months ago, so back in July, that we announced for the first time in our chapter's decade-long history, the first time that we announced support for several policy champions in Harrisburg. So we have never engaged as a chapter in an endorsement or a engagement of a member aside from a statewide office here in Pennsylvania. But this year we said, hey, we have some members who have made outstanding votes, done outstanding things with their colleagues, and so they deserve kind of the full flex of our organization, grassroots muscle and voice. So here we are. I want to just kind of set the stage. We believe having the right folks in elected office is critical to breaking barriers that exist in public policy. And so every month we on Citizens Bulletin talk about policies that are going to be transformative in Pennsylvanians' lives. So we talk about policies under the banner of economic opportunity. So policies that really empower people to earn success, like regulatory reform, policies that make small business owners more free to just expand their business or do something or offer a new innovative product or service. And so, I know in those discussions, we've talked about members that support regulatory reform, and it's become evident that the folks that are on multiple bills, who sponsor multiple bills, and who are out there in the court of the public space talking about these issues, they deserve to be elevated when it matters most. And that's when folks decide whether or not that member deserves to keep their job and get reelected. And so for that reason, because some of these individuals that we're about to talk about have backed policies and championed policies and legislation that have adhered up to some of our most pressing policy priorities, we decided to make some endorsements. And so really we look to folks and individuals and candidates who lead on important issues and who unite with others in their chamber, regardless of party, to build coalitions to make their policies a reality. And so that's how we define a policy champion. And so we engage when we've identified someone as a policy champion and when we feel like our capability here at Americans for Prosperity with our full-time team of engagement directors led by Larissa are able to make a meaningful difference in the outcome of the election. And so if we're not able to move the needle through various tactics that we might employ, we're probably going to sit it out because we have finite resources and we have to be very conscientious about where we allocate those. But really, We deploy kind of a best-in-class, data-driven grassroots and communication capability to deliver targeted messaging about these folks to critical voter segments. And Larissa will talk about some of those things, but I thought I would just talk through the dozen members, both in the State House and State Senate, that we have deemed to be policy champions and who we are working hard to make sure voters know about their record, and know that on November 3rd, their vote for them is going to be meaningful when it comes toward, continuing the conversation about whatever given policy priority they have championed. And so I'm going to start with the state Senate candidates that we endorsed. And so there are two of those individuals. And so the first is Senator John DeSanto. He is in his first term in Harrisburg. His district is actually in Dauphin County, where Harrisburg is, and in Perry County as well. But he's really been a leader on two spaces that I know we've talked about on the show. So the first is regulatory reform. He has sponsored the REINS Act, which I know we've talked about before, but just as a reminder, listeners, that stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny. REINS is the acronym there. And what that legislation would do is reassert the legislature's voice and role in having a say in things that are going to, and regulations that are going to impact us in a significant way financially. So it would require a vote by the General Assembly for any regulation that would have an effect on us of $1 million or more annually. So he was the prime sponsor of that legislation. He's also been a prime sponsor of red tape reduction, which orders a 6-month review of our code for transparency of mandates and implements that common sense rule that they've done at the federal level that we now so desperately need to do here in the state, that 1 in, 2 out model for new regulations. So, hey, for every new regulation you're going to impose on us, you better take 2 off the books. So he's led on these conversations around regulatory reform to kind of free businesses up. And I think now more than ever, as the state opens up and folks are getting back to work, it is so important to lift the red tape that is potentially holding folks back. And then the other area that Senator DeSanto has been a leader on is occupational licensing reform. His legislation, Senate Bill 637, was occupational licensing reform, and that was that good moral character legislation that I know we spent a whole show discussing. But basically it says that, hey, all of those occupational licensing boards in Harrisburg that exist, that basically you have to go to get a permission slip to be able to work in a given field, it requires that they look at more than just the fact that you have a conviction on your record. And to us, that's great, that's good. And that legislation we sponsored with a member from the other party, and that passed unanimously. And so those are the kind of things that we think are immediately breaking barriers once they're enacted, and they are just a great example of what working together to do good looks like. So that's Senator DeSanto. Senator Scott Martin is the second member we endorsed. He is from the Lancaster area, and he is also in his first term. And he has been an advocate for several buckets. I think one of the biggest is on employment. He has sponsored legislation that will kind of codify the Supreme Court Mark Janus decision here in Pennsylvania. So it would repeal our state law that authorizes public sector unions to collect fair share fees from non-members, and it would require that the states give a biannual notification to employees, so state workers, that membership in a union is voluntary and it's consensual, and it is not a condition of employment. And so he has long said that, workers should have a say over their paycheck, who they associate with, and who speaks for them. And we wholeheartedly agree. The Supreme Court affirmed in the Janus decision that government workers have a First Amendment right to make their own decision around union membership. And so until we pass legislation like Senator Martin's bill, the employee rights notification legislation, I am afraid that Pennsylvania is simply not going to just voluntarily provide its employees with that level of notice that they are due and owed. And so he's really led on employment. He's also been a supporter of criminal justice reform measures measures like probation reform. And he's also been a strong supporter of common sense fiscal policy reforms, like the Taxpayer Protection Act, which would tie spending increases in Harrisburg to our rate of inflation and population growth. You know, we see this increased spend every year in Harrisburg. It's gotten out of control. Reforms like Taxpayer Protection Act are needed, and Senator Martin's really been on the front lines. And so for that reason, we've endorsed him. And so we have folks knocking on doors in both of those districts and making calls. And so we have a lot of work yet to do. So I know Larissa will talk a bit about those opportunities. But now I'm going to run through our House members, and I'm just going to give a much more high-level overview of these folks. But first, we have Representative Carrie Benninghoff, who is now the new majority leader. And so we are thrilled to see him ascend to that new leadership role. But he has been on the front lines of the conversation around the need for comprehensive tax reform in Harrisburg. And so we did a whole lobby day with his team in October, and he's driven big ideas, bold ideas, and that's what we think Pennsylvania needs. Don't need to kind of work around the edges. We need big, bold policy reforms, and he's been on the front lines. So next up, we have Chris Dush. He is a current member of the House, but he is running for an open Senate seat. And so he's been a consistent voice throughout his time in the House for responsible government. And so we think he's also been a supporter of the Taxpayer Protection Act over in the House. So we think having him in the Senate is going to be wonderful for all those Pennsylvanians that just want to keep more of what they earn. Representative Seth Grove from York is someone who has fought to rein in kind of the regulatory overreach of state agencies. He's been a leader in the conversation around increased transparency and oversight in Harrisburg. He's done a great job. He is a tireless advocate for Harrisburg working for you, not the other way around. And so thrilled to be supporting Representative Seth Grove. Next up, we have a freshman, Representative Mike Jones. He took an early and strong stand for criminal justice reform. He was the very first Republican co-sponsor for probation reform and occupational licensing reform. And so he really sent an early message that he is committed to smart on crime, soft on taxpayer policies. And so for that, we're so grateful. You know, he was someone that he proactively reached out to us when we began our kind of reject bailouts campaign. So I know we've talked about that on the show as well, but we talked about the need for our federal representative to reject another bailout of Harrisburg. And Representative Jones was like, heck yes, they do. We need to get our fiscal house in order here before DC gives us another dollar. And so it's members of that sort of thinking that we need more of. So we were excited to make that endorsement. Next up, Representative Dawn Kiefer, and she has really taken seriously the need to restrain spending. And so she's emerged as a leader on a lot of, fiscal conversations. And so for that, we're so grateful. Representative Kate Klunk. She actually was the sponsor of the Employee Rights Notification Act, that worker protection bill in the House. And so she just has really been an advocate for public workers' rights. And she's also been a leading advocate for legislation to provide more robust review of red tape. And so she sponsored some of those regulatory bills in the House. And so for the same reasons as I mentioned about Senator Martin and Senator DeSanto, she's kind of taken that very similar approach. And so important member in our assembly. Representative Andrew Lewis is a freshman. He's done a great job working with anyone to do good. He's been someone that kind of sought out folks of all ideologies and persuasions to just figure out where they could work together to have great numbers support great reforms. And so he's who sponsored the Fighting Chance Act, which is just a great piece of legislation that creates a pilot program for red tape reduction. And he sponsored that with a member very different from him, Representative Kenyatta from Philadelphia. But gosh, they found common ground on this and created some just wonderful conversations in committee around this legislation, and we hope and look forward to it getting a full vote in the House before this year's end. Next, Representative Greg Rothman. He is from the Harrisburg area. He has really stood for Pennsylvanians having greater access to more affordable health care, and he has just done a great job, again, for public workers, really having the most autonomy over their decisions when it comes to their hard-earned dollars and where those are directed. Next, Representative David Rowe. He is a freshman. He represents actually now Congressman Keller's old district, but he's been a strong leader on educational opportunity issues and has also been a strong voice for occupational licensing reform. We think he has a very bright future and someone that I think we'll hear a lot more of throughout his career in Harrisburg. And last but not least, Representative Ryan Warner. He is from out in my neck of the woods in the Southwest in Fayette County, and he has been a leader for fiscal responsibility. He in the House is the prime sponsor of the Taxpayer Protection Act, who's consistently demonstrated a commitment to addressing out-of-control spending. It's what I think guides so many of his votes, and that's what folks expect of members, but you don't always get it. And so when there are members that put that first, those are the folks we want to get behind. So that's a little bit about our political engagement, our announcement of the 12 members that we are supporting this cycle. And so I'm going to turn it over to Larissa, but I know that was a mouthful. But if anyone has questions or just want a refresher of who I mentioned, you can always go to americansforprosperity.org, and we have the press release in our news section of the website announcing those principled policy champions. So that was on July 20th. So definitely check that out if you need a review. But Larissa, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. So like Ashley said before, my name is Larissa Gahn, and I'm Director of Grassroots Operations. And along with the field team, I am heading up the citizen contact effort on these races that Ashley just talked about. And we have scores of volunteers from Pittsburgh to Erie to Scranton to Philadelphia who are working on this portfolio of reelection efforts with us. We have a great team of engagement directors. We have Emily, who's out in the Pittsburgh area, Linwood, who's out in the Philadelphia area, Diana, who's also out in the Southeast, and we have Zig, who's in Central PA. So they, along with the engagement team and our volunteers, we are working through these reelection efforts through citizen contact. We are directly communicating with donors, and we're letting them know that these state senators that Ashley talked about before, Senators DeSanto and Martin, these are our policy champions. These are principled individuals who are fighting for Pennsylvanians every day in Harrisburg. And you might think, well, I don't live in Lancaster County. Senator Martin doesn't represent me, so how is he fighting for me? Well, we can tell you that both of these senators, Senator Martin and DeSanto, have been a firewall against the current administration. Ashley outlined different policies that they've championed and different things that they've pushed back on. They've pushed back on harmful policies that would hurt small business owners, that would hurt families, that would hurt taxpayers. So voting against those bad policies and championing good policies has rewarded all of Pennsylvanians. And so we owe it to them to get them back in Harrisburg, to keep them in Harrisburg so they can fight for us. So you might be thinking now, well, how do I sign up? How do we get involved? And that's where I can help. That's where the engagement team can help. So the first step is connecting you with an engagement director who is closest to you in your area. And if you volunteered with us before, that's fantastic. You may have somebody that you already have a relationship with that you can reach out to. But if not, that's totally okay. So the first step where you can go is you can message us on Facebook. Our page's Facebook address, you can go to facebook.com, and then it's www.facebook.com/PAAFP. That'll take you right to our Facebook page. You can message our page directly. You can also comment on a post. Hey, how do I get involved in this? It could be about any particular post, or you can just say, hey, message the page. I really want to help with these reelection efforts. Have somebody reach out to me ASAP, and we will. So we will get you connected with an engagement director in your area who can walk you through how to get involved. And so now let's say we get you involved with an engagement director. What are next steps? Well, our citizen contact effort span 4 different categories. The first one is phone calls. So what you can do is you can use our system. We have an app. You can either install it on your phone or we can get one of our iPads to you. It is a very easy to use app, and you can call voters directly, and you can tell them, you would go through a really quick survey with them, tell them about the policy champions that we have, and you can talk with them directly on the phone. So that's the first way that you can get involved. The next way is canvassing or going door to door, and Ashley touched on that at the top of the call. Well, we are going door to door for these reelection efforts that we're working on. So we are talking with voters at their doorstep. We're socially distancing. We're wearing masks. We're standing back, and we're having conversations on their front porches, in their driveways, and telling them about these policy champions and why we need to keep them back in Harrisburg. This also is an app that we use too, which is great. So if you've worked with different organizations or different efforts in the past, we don't have paper walkbooks. We actually have everything digital, which is so fantastic, and it's so easy to use. So that is something that we can get you connected with if you would like that. We do have some people who are driving out, some volunteers to do this work with us. So we would love to have you work alongside us canvassing. The next is text messaging. We do send text to voters directly. So if maybe the face-to-face communication isn't for you, but you would be willing to send text, we would love to have you send text with us. Again, just reach out. That's something that you can do from the comfort of your own home. You don't need to come and see us. So we can get you all set up in the comforts of your own home, your home office, or maybe even outside if the weather's nice. And then the last way that you can help us with this is through our iVolunteer petition. So if you go to www.americansforprosperity.ivolunteers.com, you can see our iVolunteer petition, and we are there. You can share that iVolunteer petition on maybe your Facebook page. Maybe you can email it to somebody, but that has a petition that you can sign. It outlines the reasons why these particular individuals are policy champions, and you can just send that in text messages, like I said, Facebook message, email, and just get that out there. And that's something that they can send along to their friends. So, you can be a force multiplier through that, getting that out there, getting all of these petitions signed so we can say, yes, they take the pledge they will vote to reelect Senator DeSanto or Senator Martin. So those are the 4 main ways that you can get involved with us. And again, reach out to our Facebook page. I'll also give my email address. It's LG as in giraffe, AU, G as in giraffe, HEN as in Nancy at afphq.org. You can send me an email there and we can just get you engaged. So if you just want to send me an email, we will get you connected to the engagement director closest to you. We would love to have you help us in any one of these contact efforts. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope to hear from a bunch of you soon.
Larissa, thanks so much for that. And I will just say there are a lot of organizations, a lot of campaigns right now that are exclusively operating on digital spaces. So they're just using social media because they're saying, hey, voter contact this year just isn't in the cards. And we've taken a different approach. We think we can have voter contact in safe and secure ways and believe wholeheartedly that it is what is going to cut through the noise of TV, mail, and all of the stuff that exists in the digital space. The conversations on the phones, over text, and most critically at the doors are what folks are going to remember on November 3rd. And so we are excited to be involved with these engagements. And so look forward to giving a report sometime in November or December about the results of these and where we found success. And prayerfully, we go 12 for 12. But Susan, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Larissa. We appreciate this report so much. Listeners, you've been hearing from Ashley Klingon-Smith, the Pennsylvania State Director for Americans for Prosperity, and Larissa Gahn, who is the Director of Grassroots Operations, giving you a number of opportunities to get involved in the upcoming election and help get people in office who are on the side of the citizenry, on our side. So we thank you again so much for being with us today. And listeners, we hope you'll join us again next month for another Citizens Bulletin, knowing your role as an informed Pennsylvania citizen.